Hello and welcome. Thank you for registering for our webinar panel discussion hosted by market leader in building analytics software, CIM. Your chair for the next 60 minutes, my name is Jim McClelland, founder and editor of SustMeme, the magazine and the weekly bulletin. The focus of this webinar for real estate audiences, especially in the US, joining us is how fault detection and diagnostics, FDD, improves retro commissioning and monitoring-based commissioning outcomes in commercial buildings. To take us through the topic, we have a wealth of built environment experience and a breadth of perspectives on our panel today. So by way of introductions, please join me in welcoming Phil Zito, CEO of the Smart Buildings Academy, Daniel Hosko, Commissioning Manager, Aero Performance Group, and of course, David Walsh, CEO and founder from our hosts, CIM. Our format for the day. David will kick us off with a brief topic intro, then we'll be exploring the insights, the issues. Our panel is going to delve into the role of fault detection and diagnostics in commissioning, the benefits of utilizing FDD with clients, some key considerations when implementing, plus then to wrap up a final look ahead, some takeaways, audience Q&A to close. So there we have it then. Audience, if you do have questions for our panel, please pop them in the box at the bottom of your screen. You should see a Q&A icon down there. Keep typing your queries in throughout our session. We'll try to get to them during both the debate, in amongst and in the final Q&A, plus pick others up offline post-event. It is all live and recorded, as you will see. So once the webinar concludes, kindly take a moment. There's a very short feedback survey for you to complete, but it's super helpful for the organizers to understand what you want more of and what the next one should look like. And also keep an eye out for the link to the recording, which will be arriving in your email inbox after this. So that's enough from me. Let the show begin. Kick us off then. Dave's going to give us a scene setter, some opening insights and conversation starters, an explainer intro, how FDD improves retro commissioning and monitoring-based commissioning in commercial buildings. So, Dave, it's over to you, please.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you everyone for joining. I've 8 to 10 slides, 8 to 10 minutes. I won't rabbit on too much. We'll try and get into the questions as quick as we can. So just a couple of quick high-level numbers. I think most people now know that retro commissioning and monitoring-based commissioning is a large market, and it has a good solid compound annual growth rate of 15%, and it's obviously very beneficial to the actual owners and to the identification and resolution of energy opportunities. So why are firms utilizing fault detection and diagnosis with their clients? Quite simply, it's a fantastic hook into your clients' buildings to have continuous live high resolution data. That leads to new revenue streams. So new revenue streams are upgrades of equipment. It's expansion within the clients' buildings themselves, universities, hospitals, hotels. You can go from one to more to a portfolio. It's a high value service. So the beauty about having good data is that you're able to control the conversation around what is and isn't happening and why there's a challenge with our breakdowns or energy consumption. There's a differentiation if no matter how good any engineering firm is, it's a major advantage to be able to have granular data. And so that in tenders and proposals to clients means that essentially you can price work at a lower dollar value and actually gain more profit from it because there's not as many manual disconnected on-site tasks when you're getting high resolution data from the site. And capital planning with independent insights, once you have good data, you're able to see what equipment is and isn't causing trouble. It's not always based on time or age. Very often you can have a new piece of equipment that was undersized during the specification or not installed correctly or not commissioned correctly. And even though that equipment might be 3 or 4 years old, it might actually be the equipment that needs attention. No, so the client retention component, and happy for Dan or any panelists to talk about this from their experience, but it's clients are asking for more, right? This is the ability to work with a client as an independent group, but having access to this data means that you're able to align it to their goals around reducing OpEx, improving the comfort of tenants, working and aligning to state and federal legislation, and making sure that that's an ongoing relationship. I think every single business that's out there wants to have a better relationship with their good clients who value the expertise of the firm. And in many cases, most of those clients actually want to give the firm more work, but how do you differentiate yourself from the competition? And good data is always an advantage. So internally, every business, my own included, you're looking to see how can you take on more clients and take on more revenue without increasing the headcount. Because if you can, it improves your profit margins. Audits and time to diagnosis, it's very, very important, right? Like, I mean, there's an awful lot of engineering firms spend a lot of time traveling to site. I had a conversation last week where one of our clients that we're onboarding, one of the engineers had just come back from a site with a memory stick. I put the memory stick into the head end of the BMS, downloading CSV files to bring them back to the office to run them through macros and Python scripts. And all of that is very basic for us. Like you don't have to do any of it because the information's streaming every 15 minutes. And then the ability to preserve and knowledge within a team. It can be a challenge for firms. You go to market to hire someone, it takes 3 or 4 months. You do the onboarding of the person, and just as they're hitting a good cruising altitude and they have a good relationship with the clients and they fit the culture of the team, if they leave, they take a lot of that knowledge with them. Whereas with good technology around fault detection and diagnosis, you can build a lot of the firm's expertise into the actual expert systems that are involved in the back end. So if someone leaves and another engineer joins, the person's able to sit into the seat and operate the tool quite well and scale that team. So what do we install? This is the cliche black box. It's about 4 inches top to bottom, out 2 inches deep. And this sits on the same network that all the existing plant and equipment communicates over on the Ethernet network. We would go to ComEd, Con-Ed, Excel Energy, Duke, and with a letter of authority, we would take the main meter data. Very importantly as well, we also grab any sub-metering data that's on site, hugely beneficial to wrap intelligence around those data streams, because meters that flatline can be very, very difficult to pick up. And if it's an on-billing for a tenant, it can be a huge problem. And also just spikes around sub-metering data is very beneficial. But immediately, as in like 2 to 3 hours after we install our device, we're able to listen to tens of thousands of individual pieces of plant and equipment. And we talk directly to the controller, so therefore we don't have to interact with the head end, with the BAS provider. So we're able to collect and unlock that data and then provide people with the root cause of issues. We interrogate the data in the cloud using fault detection and diagnostic technology and research. And we're able to give people the root cause, with people able to move the issues around. So very often an issue could be identified and it might be brought to the mechanical contractor. The mechanical contractor would look at it, and sometimes it may have to be passed on to the BS or BMS contractor. But if it's an issue with the cooling towers, you may have to get the plumber involved. And moving around and collaborating amongst those people is what leads to kind of improving the time to rectification. And that can often be very, very hard. The ability to share photos as well is really important, because a picture can often be very, very powerful. Cleaning the data, I think anybody that's involved in the industry would have come across this, the unstructured machine data. It's very, very difficult to gather that quickly and clean it and normalize it and structure it so you can then interrogate it. This component, CIM, which stands for Continuous Intelligent Monitoring, is just under 10 years old. And this whole component of gathering and structuring the data took me nearly 4 years to nail at the start. So then the AI and the expert systems, this is just a brief overview of how we interrogate the data once we gather it and clean it and send it to the cloud. So this is just to inspect a VAV airflow leak, obviously causing thermal comfort issues, a huge challenge across the industry, and it's completely unnecessary. And the level of detail that this goes into, because a thing that myself and the team are absolutely obsessed about is nuisance alarms or alarm fatigue. It's totally unnecessary. And if you can give someone the root cause of an issue, then you're helping them. And good technology is all about efficiency, and it's all about helping people. Bad technology adds a step to your day. And people end up using colorful language around that type of technology. But just very briefly, this is to inspect VAV airflow leak. You're looking at zone temperature. We're looking at airflows. We're looking at dampers. We're looking at outside air temperature. And then we're going back and looking at the parent system. So doing child-parent analysis before we kick off an actual fault and send it to the relevant person. So when you do that, you can just get, you get everyone working better together. So part of our team, our chief technology officer built the world's largest software collaboration tool. It's a product called Jira with a company called Atlassian. Our chief technology officer, his name is Anton. He's the first employee. And collaboration is key within software developers. And same way, collaboration is essential within maintenance and technician teams, and also within consulting engineering firms who want to see what is and isn't happening on a site. Because irrespective to the level of expertise in any firm, nothing matters until something's fixed. So all the excellent recommendations that you provide, unless they actually get rectified, you don't get the benefit. And then providing for large portfolios of clients, like the portfolio view, the equipment levels, the improvements or the challenges within the indoor environment, and then being able to benchmark contractors and see who is somebody that the owner or yourselves should reach out to and kind of congratulate, and then who within the supply chain needs a phone call to remind them that they may not value the culture of the firm the owners they're working with, or that a maintenance contract is coming up for renewal, and unless they actually collaborate with others and work through the issues, then they may not be considered for the upcoming tender. So this one about how fault detection complements a BS or a BMS, it's like the functional description of the BMS is very often not implemented even at the very start of post-defects liability. So it's all about recalibrating the system back to the way it was designed. And then it's to get the root cause issues of the control system logic and get to the bottom of it. Before it's escalated to a client, you end up with a client complaint. Or if the BMS is staging equipment incorrectly, you can have things like chillers short cycling, which as people would know, it kills the compressor. Or alternatively, you can have equipment coming on incorrectly in schedules, and then you're killing the utility consumption. But then every single contractor that uses our technology, we've thousands around the world, they all value having that data, because no BAS contractor wants to have a negative relationship with the engineering team in the museum or in the hospital or across the hotels or the university campus. They actually they don't really want to investigate. They really want to find and fix things that are broken. And then for the owners, for their own side, it's aggregating multiple sets of BASs very often, and I'm sure many people on the webinar would see in shopping centers or airports, you can have 2 or 3 different building automation systems or across the entire site. And that can be a big challenge because they can be from very different ages. And to have that single pane of glass for the team on the site is very powerful. So here's some further resources. That's me. Jim, I'll hand it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dave. So lovely kickoff there. So good data helps us control the conversation around the likes of energy consumption, high value service, price better, profit more, and also meet expectations, as Dave was saying. Clients are asking for more. So it's a differentiator potentially. Client retention. Also, you can secure knowledge in-house within your team. And essentially, it makes people's jobs easier when it works well. So multiple wins, and we'll really dig into some of those benefits as we go through. So first up then, panel. First question, we're going to have a little look at the role of FDD in commissioning. Thank you for that, Dave. So Daniel, I'm coming to you first. So retro commissioning. My question for you is, in what ways does FDD improve the accuracy and the efficiency of functional performance testing during RCx? So retro commissioning, Daniel.
Thank you, Jim. And yeah, for retro commissioning, I'm kind of talk about that and maybe a little bit of just the new construction commissioning with this as well. But kind of playing off what Dave said there, where you have to drive out to the job site and pick up your flash drive to grab all your local trend data and pull that and drive back to your office. And then when you plug it back in at your office, you pray that it didn't fail along the way, right? And it actually copied over and you didn't have any corruption. But the nicest thing about like an FDD is, the ability to just parse through so much data so much quicker than just a manual review. It's going to highlight and point us in the right direction, maybe have us help target what we want to actually troubleshoot and look for. With that, I'm not worrying about having to, again, deal with local trending. I can pick up an entire site, equipment, systems. I have that in real time, and I'm parsing through that data a lot easier than if I'm doing just like a standard retro where I'm going out to do an audit. I'm pulling that data maybe during the winter or during a swing season or at one specific point in time. I'm not gathering maybe as much as I want or as continuously as I need. The benefit with that, obviously, having FDD there is we're going to naturally uncover some issues as well. And I kind of tie that into the commissioning process too, where if we're out there functionally testing or kind of manipulating these systems, we might see that it operates correctly during that manipulation, but then when we go to off hours or we go to a different season or something changes with that facility, we're starting to catch those issues like the way it's actually programmed and not just us trying to find a way to test that in a point in time. We've done this a lot where we've actually put it in with new construction, and I think some of that benefit is you're eliminating that sampling that you typically would do with a retro commissioning project or a new commissioning job where you only look at a handful, maybe 10%, or a couple boxes per floor if it's a fan powered or a VAV or something that's a lot of equipment. And one neat thing with that too is we actually did this on a core and shell project where we commissioned all the base building equipment before there were any of the unitary equipment out there. So again, you're talking about a point in time here where the system wasn't even where it was supposed to be down the line. So then over the next couple of years, we had FDD in place and we actually were catching issues and flagging things with not only the tenant build outs that were occurring, but then how that affected the systems we had already commissioned and turned over. We were almost redoing some of the programming and finding faults and problems that weren't there when we first went through that before. So, FDD, just beyond just modern-based commissioning or just a retro, there's a lot of other applications for it, I think, where it can do a lot of cool things for us that we haven't seen, over 10 years ago.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. So, and a lot of those multiple applications, catching issues, a lot of that versatility, of course, gives us that much talked about agility that's so valuable in today's business markets and the built environment, full stop. So Phil, thank you. So Phil, if I come to you now, so I'm asking you about monitoring-based commissioning. So after an initial RCx project, how does FDD enable continuous commissioning and prevent that dreaded performance drift over time? Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So let's be honest. Most of us, right, we've seen this movie before. We've been through an RCx project. We fix a bunch of stuff. A year later, usually the opposite season, half of it's broken again. And why is that? And that's because without follow-up, everything is going to drift. And this is where I feel FDDs are really underutilized and misunderstood. They come in not as a magic solution, but really as like, picture a watchdog that just never sleeps. It's not replacing your people, which is one of the concerns a lot of folks have. They're like, oh crap, it's going to replace us all. It just really helps folks see what's really happening. And I get the skepticism because we've been talking about commissioning and FDDs and all of this since probably when I started in the industry, it feels like, and I'm old. I don't have any hair left. So a lot of folks have been promised for years, put this tool in and your building's going to run amazing. It's going to sing and dance and the unicorns and rainbows and everything, right? It's going to be great. It doesn't seem to work that way. It doesn't, real FDDs, they don't just scream fault. What they do, if they're doing their job correctly, it should tell you what, where, and often why the issue is happening. And I was walking through NAU with my son doing a college tour yesterday. And the little things you learn looking up in the, or growing up in the industry, I look up, I see the dots on the ceiling. I'm like, oh, that's where they got a VAV box. So that's what FDDs do. They say, hey, go to this system, go and look into this issue. And that means less arguing, less finger pointing. You don't want to kill your coworkers, all positive things, right? And, you know, it reminds me of one school district. They had just finished a full retro commissioning project. And that's an important point. A lot of these retro commissioning projects, they're not full projects. They're for like a system. And then the faults occur on other systems. And if you don't implement across those various systems, you're going to struggle to see the interrelationships. So 6 months later, complaints start rolling in. It turns out that schedules had drifted. A few overrides were never cleared out. With the FDDs that they'd added after this, because they had FDDs on some systems, they added them on. They started to catch those within hours. And now they were catching schedules that weren't changed. They're catching overrides. So, you know, I'm going to do things a little different. I'm going to throw a question back at the chat here. And I'm just genuinely curious if you've ever had systems go back to garbage after doing RCx or retro commissioning. Like, go in the chat and just type yes. Or if they could type in the chat. Sometimes with these they can't. But just type yes and let us know if you're seeing this on your end. I'm interested in that.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. And opening it up to the audience as well to contribute and give you a little bit of feedback on that. So some nice points there, overcoming, if you like, the tech fear factor in terms of change. You're helping, not replacing staff. You know, good FDDs, they can tell you what, where, and often why. And I like the fact that you suggest that effectively fault detection is a positive thing. You know, it's not a blame game. It's a positive. It's helping things work better, last longer, save money, be more efficient, etc. So excellent. Dave, coming back to you then. So measurement and verification. What impact does FDD have on improving that measurement and verification for RCx outcomes?
Yeah, it's interesting. The M&V is the end product of it. But back to what Phil said, like in the sense of, like, why did this not work in the past? And then why is real estate, in certain cases, why are owners kind of slow adopters to technology? And the reason it didn't work in the past, and the reason that I've been able to build a business like this, is a lot of it is the underlying improvements in technology. So our ability to acquire data is quite cost effective. And then even transfer it. Like, I think there's a number of people on the webinar who'd remember ISDN lines that had to be installed into buildings, whatever, 15 years ago, a couple of $1,000s to get them in. Whereas gathering the data, transferring it, using AI to interrogate it, and then the workflow tools means that the underlying technology stack is opened up to allow businesses like CIM to be able to kind of evolve. And then, like, when you look at real estate and you compare it to other sectors like transport and aviation. So like in the transport section, you have Samsara who take data from trucks and transport companies. And they're able to tell you, you know, if a driver is driving like over the limit in a school district, if during the winter here in Colorado, they're leaving on the truck for an hour while they have lunch to keep the truck warm. And all of these habits around how that hardware and that vehicle is being used. And same with the airline industry, if you go back 25 years ago and doing planned maintenance, like an aircraft would have to be grounded every 50,000 hours and stripped down, rebuilt, and put it back up in the air. Whereas as you move towards data-driven maintenance, you're able to monitor and verify every single component of like transport, airlines, and now into real estate. So this concept of continuously interrogating large volumes of data is in other sectors. And it's really, over the last couple of years, it's really coming to real estate. And it helps everyone, right? The let's say state and government legislation with this type of data, they're looking for more granular information. Like, they're not looking for a PDF of some performance-based review that's 6 months old. They want to see high resolution granular information. So like FDD ties into it. We always use the client's utility data because they want to see cost reduction. That's very, very important. But at the same time, supporting it with the actual faults that were involved and how they helped achieve those savings that flowed through with electricity, water, and gas is very, very important.
Excellent, great, thank you, David. And nice bit of context there in terms of digitalization of markets and the business community more broadly in comparisons with transport, for example. You know, the built environment, it might be late to the party in some respects, but it's not an island. It's not working in isolation. It's part of some broader trends and part of broader talent flows as well, with people coming into our sector that may not have been coming in previously. And I'm getting a message here that there are lots of yeses coming through in the chat in response to Phil's question. And some have put it in the Q&A as well. But yeah, apparently they're you're firing in the yeses. So there you go, Phil. You're getting a bit of feedback already. So zooming in a bit then on some of the benefits. Let's look a bit more at these upsides. Let's keep the happy momentum going for a moment before we look at perhaps some of the challenges. So Phil, coming to you. So let's talk about optimizing internal resources. One of the biggest constraints for engineering teams is the time spent on manual inspections. So how, in your opinion, has FDD helped clients make better use of those valuable and scarce internal resources?
Yeah. So great question, Jim. You know, I think there's this belief at times that some of the folks on the engineering team, they're just doing their time. I'm going to say it. Some folks in our industry will say the word lazy. I don't think they're lazy. Most of them that I've worked with, they're buried. Like, they're drowning in urgent stuff, and everything's urgent. Leaks, hot calls, equipment that doesn't behave. The old lady in the office who's always cold, and yet the one time you fix things, now she's hot. So it makes no sense. The equipment doesn't behave. They're trying to do all of this, but then they're doing it with paper logs, gut checks, hallway conversations. Like, I think this is how we fix this. So what FDD does, right, is it's going to give your teams eyes and ears that they don't have time, right, if they don't have this. So, like, if they don't have these eyes and ears, they're not going to be able to see this. And they're only one person. So instead of spending hours walking around, pulling trend logs, hearing that example of all the spreadsheets and everything, that's crazy. What this does is it brings, if it's done right, it's going to bring issues to them. They should be sorted. They should be filtered. They should be prioritized. And it gives them direction. So I want to be clear, though, because there's this misconception. FDDs aren't going to fix your culture. If you have a culture of not doing work, it's not going to do the work for you. Let's be clear on that. Maybe David has the solution a couple years down the road, but right now it's not doing the work for you. But it is going to make the work way more focused, significantly more focused. And for some of you, I know you're probably thinking, we don't even have a working maintenance plan. We're still reacting to fire drills. We literally are just by the seat of our pants. That's okay. Like, FDDs don't require perfection, right? You don't have to be perfect. In fact, I would argue it works best with the messy buildings because you're gaining back time. Anytime you fix chaos, it's always going to be better. So this reminds me of a VA hospital we worked with. There were these two techs. They were juggling 3 massive buildings. They couldn't keep up, always putting out fires, deferred maintenance. So when they finally deployed FDDs, they identified a handful of repetitive faults, one of which was a mixed air damper that was stuck. And once they fixed that, it saved 2% on their reheat energy use, which, okay, 2%. But what it really did as they started to implement these things was it gave them more time back. So then they could go work on issues. So honestly, I'm curious for the chat here, what eats up the most time in your day? Where are you finding yourselves most stuck? So the rest of the panelists can potentially say, hey, that's something FDDs would take care of. I'd be very interested in seeing that from you all.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil. And we're getting the questions firing in as well. So I'm gonna be cracking the whip, and we're speeding up on the panel so we can get to some of them. So Daniel, coming to you now. So it's a money thing, driving revenue. So from your experience, how does offering FDD help engineering consultancies like Aero unlock new revenue opportunities? So talk to me about revenue, Daniel.
And certainly, if we're going to speed up, I'll just talk fast like I usually always do, so that's not a problem. But for us at Aero, right, FDD is kind of a tool in our toolbox, so we use that. We've built around that. We have it implemented in our own culture. So like the biggest thing is maybe not even new revenue opportunities, but the first one was just making us as a consultant just faster, more improved, more efficient, where we can do more with less, which is really a theme we've kind of talked about throughout this presentation, whether it be the building itself or even us as a consultant. We can take on more work, we can help with more issues, help with more clients, because we're able to get through a lot of this data a lot faster utilizing an FDD software. The other part of it is obviously, much more detail for clients. Again, I talked about limiting sampling back in the past, but with that, we're able to dive into a lot more equipment and systems at a more granular level, which allows us to help them find maybe some other issues just above and beyond your low-hanging fruit or your bigger pieces of equipment, which also lets them prioritize some maintenance. So we do a lot of stuff with our clients where we provide them with kind of like VAV or terminal unit reports that lets them target maintenance rather than just go running around or waiting for those hot and cold calls that Phil was talking about with one of his buildings earlier there. So again, a lot of stuff that usually gets sampled or just never looked at, we're now kind of able to focus on and help out with, or maybe catching some issues before they even, become a problem or it becomes a hot or cold call there. I talked about scaling there again, but that's a big thing. Again, we don't have a huge, we have workforce needs, right? Whether that be the building level or ourselves. So being able to do more with less is always a big deal. And I think we've done a great job on our team with doing that. I just want to touch back one more time again, that FBB VAV level, which again gets ignored so much. I think that also can relate to some of the drift we see in some of these buildings where something doesn't persist as well. A lot of times, there's a lot of sequence of operations where a duct static reset or a DAT reset or some sort of sequence for the main air handler is in place, and it gets implemented during an RCx or even a monitoring project, and it starts to run. But it's actually the VAV or FPB level that sets that. So if a damper gets stuck or a valve gets hung open or the signal fails, an actuator fails, those cause our resets now at the main units to be a problem. We start to see that drift. So for us, one of those things we've unlocked with clients as a revenue stream is that ongoing kind of stickiness with them where we're always monitoring this. We're making sure you don't drift. We're catching if those resets are no longer working. We know that it's down the line. It's FPB 1, 2, and 3 that are causing it. And rather than having a huge system problem, we're solving a little thing with a fan power box that probably goes unnoticed by the building team typically, but we're actually saving way more than just, that damper or that zone itself, but it's actually the whole system. So.
Excellent. Thank you. And and we're really speeding up now. And I've got a note that the chat is now open and people are using it. So we're really buzzing with the audience. So fire in your comments and your questions. And actually, I'll just one very quick fire question for you, Dan, while I've got you on the screen here. I've got one here saying, have you participated in any energy or utility incentive programs? Do you use FDD for this? Just a real quick answer on that, please, Dan.
Absolutely. I mean, my company's out of Chicagoland. I mean, we do some work nationally as well, but we're very heavily involved in the ComEd energy efficiency program. Specifically, there's a monitoring-based commissioning one where we utilize FDD for all of that. Before the MBCx became a thing through the ComEd program, there was a pretty substantial retro commissioning program as well. And then depending on the building fit, we might utilize FDD or at least internal analytics and Python scripts and tools on those types of projects. But we do a ton of it. We help get clients, rebate money back. We help fund a lot of our projects that way, which, is a great benefit we have in our area. I know every utility in every, state or region is different. So some of them are more lucrative or more funded than others. We're lucky here, but we were able to develop this over, almost 10 years plus of having that as a utility rebate program in our area.
Excellent. Thank you. Right. And nice answer there. And Dave, so we're rattling along now. So you touched on a little bit of this already, improving client retention. So long-term partnerships built on ongoing value. So just a quick few pointers, please, Dave. How does FDD help consultants move beyond the project-based model to become those trusted long-term performance partners?
Yeah, but it goes back to all the previous comments, Jim, around like buildings are dynamic, right? It's not fix and forget. You know, if you look at managing and Phil touched on culture, like there's so many people within the built environment, within the supply chain of it, that in actual fact, it's 95% of people who are trying to do their very, very best, right? And how do you call out those people and say, well done? And how do you work with that client to continuously monitor those costly resources and ensure people are accountable? And touching on those maintenance plans as well that are in many cases, you know, a lot of the teams on site are overcharging for things that don't need to be done and actually not doing it. Example of that is checking the temperature on controllers, like on a control system is part of a planned BAS maintenance, but nobody's doing it, right? So why pay for it if the data is showing the temperatures are fine and no one does it? But if you're going to continuously have a relationship with an owner, and if a huge component of one of our clients, for example, is on the platform 6 years, and when we started with them, 58% of their tenant complaints were air conditioning related, so hot and cold complaints. And now as we've gone through the years, it's down to 7%. So how much time does that give back to the facility management and even the maintenance team? And then what's the impact? Like, HVAC systems are there so that to allow people to work when it's 100 degrees outside, or here in Colorado when it's freezing in the winter. And if you're able to ensure that like tenant satisfaction is optimal, well, that's the most basic thing, and that's what people expect.
Excellent, thanks. And nice point there. Buildings are dynamic, and a mention of the M word, maintenance, you know, and the need to prioritize any spend in that area. And now, so we're now coming, I said we've done the happy bit and all the benefits. Let's touch on it. It's only fair, we've got an hour, we're going to touch on the considerations. So in other words, potential issues, challenges, the other things you need to think about in terms of getting it right. So if I come to you here, then Daniel first. So from a consultancy client-facing perspective, what criteria do you think are most important when evaluating FDD providers? In other words, what separates a good vendor, merely good, from a great one? What should they be looking for to get it right, Daniel?
And right before I answer that, I just got to say, David kind of undersold that last point there, because I did a job in Colorado and it was 85 degrees during the day, and then about 3 hours later it was 30 degrees. So you can get some pretty crazy swings there. So for those not familiar, but yeah, back to the question, evaluating FDD provider. You know, for us, you know, it's a software provider, right? There's a ton of them out there, but to me, I'm looking for a company that's more than just a software company, right? I'm looking for one that understands HVAC, the building operating world, because the analytics at the end of the day are only going to be as good as we program them to be or set them up to be. If I put garbage in, I'm going to get garbage out. So I want just a software provider that's, again, very in tune with how a facility should be running, maybe has that HVAC or that background. And then also one that wants to partner with my company or myself and kind of understand how we're going to utilize it, what we're looking to do, has that technical knowledge so we can talk about how it benefits us and our business. So again, there's so many out there. I mean, I've vetted tons of them in the past. We used to have an old one, you know, many years ago. We used some stuff internally too, but finding that right fit for, you know, that wants to work with you and support you and be a partner is a huge deal. And then again, understanding just, you know, that mechanical engineering, that HVAC and building world.
Excellent, getting that fit right. Thank you. And same question to you then, Phil. So effectively, what should engineering firms look for when selecting a solution or a partner? And I wonder if you could point to any red flags or any green lights. What are those traffic light symbols for people in terms of yes or no?
So typically going and doing, putting the software in place is not the core business of an engineering firm. So I think you need to have a partner that realizes that up front. Most folks will ask me, what's the best tech? It's not really the tech as much as it's the support and follow through. I mean, there are some non-negotiables that I'll get into in a second, but you can have the slickest dashboard in the world, but if no one's helping you implement it, and if they're just handing it off to you and saying, hey, good luck, have fun with that. There's platforms out there that are notoriously difficult for building rules and getting them to operate. And that's something that's a red flag. You've got to look out for that. You've got to look out for tools that need perfect data just to get started, because no one has perfect data. None of your clients are going to have perfect data. And if you find a client with perfect data, then it's probably fake data. So you also can't have a system that just tells you there's a fault. It gives you an alert, but it gives you no context. Because at the end of the day, whatever you implement as an engineering firm, I'm not talking to owners now, I'm talking to engineering firms, the person who's understanding this, who's using this at the owner level, does not have your knowledge. They don't know, most of them don't know what VAV means. I know that sounds bad, but I'm being real with you. The guy who's the janitor is also the operator. So if it's going and being like, look at this ash rate calculation, this is what's going on, they're just gonna ignore it. So the platform needs to not just be clear to you, but also to your end users. And I would also say, avoid people who will not show you real implemented systems. If they're just going to show you a flashy demo, and I demoed this stuff in the past, so I know you can make stuff look real, but ask them, are you showing me a real site? And this is really happening, because that's what you need to see, because anything can look good in a scripted demo. I'll say the last thing is, you really have to be able to have an organization that helps you understand how to communicate this to your clients and how to support your clients. They don't need to just have an implementation plan for you, but they should help you have an implementation plan for your clients. Because at the end of the day, oftentimes you're using this to open up new revenue channels. So that is something very, very important.
Excellent, thanks. And very, very quickly, because we're getting tight for time now, but I can't let you go. We've got a question in for you, Phil, just before I pass the mic, as it were. And
Sure.
In the context of what we're talking about today, I guess, so what are your students most interested in learning about nowadays in the smart building space? So could you just give us a few kind of top topics that are hot for the people you deal with at the moment?
Yeah, so what Phil thinks is hot versus what the market actually buys are diametrically opposed, as my chief revenue officer pointed out to me the other day. It's like, you're creating these courses that no one buys, and everyone buys these things. So what we found is that in our 15,000 students and 24,000 skill assessments, I say that just to paint scope for you, the majority of the people buy our BAS 100, which is Building Automation Fundamentals, and BAS 200, which is Control Sequence Fundamentals. It's HVAC theory. I have all these great integration courses that I've created because I'm a creator. Hardly anyone buys them. Everyone says they want them. They talk about them on LinkedIn. Everyone tests poorly on BAS fundamentals, HVAC fundamentals, and IT fundamentals, and troubleshooting fundamentals. And those are the courses they buy. If I created more of those, probably have a bigger revenue company, but that is what people buy. They say they want the sexy stuff. They buy the basics. It was very shocking to me when my CRO pointed this out to me probably about a week and a half ago.
That's telling feedback, actually, and that just shows the value of data to blow away some assumptions and myths potentially. And so, Dave, if I'm coming for you now, so let's be honest, not every building or client is ready for FDD straight out the gate. So what do you look for briefly when assessing a building or portfolio readiness for implementation? What are the signals that now's the time for FDD, Dave?
Yeah, so look, the key thing is to under guarantee and over deliver, like under promise and over deliver. So what we always do before we start with any client, any engineering firm, is we do this free smart building audit, which we identify the age of the control system, the amount of plant and equipment on site, the protocols, etc., etc. And that allows us to ensure that at least at the start, if we're starting to work with a commissioning firm, that at least in the first half a dozen buildings, we're able to pick the buildings that are most suitable. The unfortunate thing, Jim, is like no one portfolio owner, like we work with some of the largest, we've won clients in $84 billion real estate investment trusts, and they're incredibly sophisticated. And they have lots and lots of awesome buildings. And then they have some buildings, you know, just quite simply are dogs. But invariably with those buildings, we might only be, instead of me taking 6,000 to 10,000 points off the building every 15 minutes, we might be taking 500 to 600 points. But there's still value in those older buildings, and invariably they have some kind of an upgrade plan. So as you take some data from it, you're able to hold the hand of the client as they upgrade the control system, or as they look into various different areas of the floor plate they want to upgrade. The key for us is you have to play the cards you're dealt. But if you're starting a project with a firm, we like to start on kind of newer buildings, and then invariably we end up working with kind of older stuff.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. And I'll pick up one audience question very quickly while you're here as well. I've got somebody's asking, should you rely on the FDD historical report data or ongoing FDD reports for RCx? So historical or ongoing?
Yeah, so maybe I'll take that one. Like you can always tap in if there is a historian module on site, and you can create a parser to analyze that data. You can look at historical data, but then the data we're interrogating is the same data that's being used to control the building. So the validation of that is very real, right? And then as we even commission our platform and get the points tagged, we invariably often uncover like mislabeled points. So invariably, like Dan is nodding, he would have seen this in a lot of cases. You know, you have to work through the data that's already there, clean it, tag it, ensure it's right before you can start interrogating it. But after that, the challenges, you know, they're never ending with the data, especially the more complex buildings.
Excellent, thank you. So now we're moving. It's actually crystal ball gazing time now. So we're looking ahead. So, well, I'm watching the clock here. We're approaching kind of the last 10 minutes. We've got questions firing in. So a little bit of crystal ball. Well, in other words, what's coming next? So Daniel, if I come to you first then. So looking ahead here, from your conversations with clients, what are the most common capability gaps or future needs they highlight? What are your clients flagging there? Capability gaps, future needs, what's coming, Daniel?
So as it relates to FDD, I think it's overcoming the initial hurdle in some of these buildings we have. I think David alluded to it a little bit there. We actually have a lot of buildings that still have pneumatics, or they put in a brand new control system and it just wasn't set up properly from the start. So now we have clients that are worried about taking that next step and jump into an FDD when they can't even have their existing house in order. You know, we've seen it. You plug in, you get a bunch of stuff with the same BACnet address ID, which creates a ton of conflicts on the network, or you have stuff that's not labeled correctly or not labeled BACnet at all. So like no one knows how it was controlling to begin with. So you have all kind of issues from the start. And now I'm saying, oh, let's put in the fault detection and put this in place and get it set up and running. And they're like, well, my BAS doesn't even control right to begin with. Why would I want to deal with more technology and more software? So that's always a hurdle to overcome with clients. But I think from their perspective too, we have somewhat of an aging building operator workforce. We're getting some new blood in, but there's still a gap there where, again, we have less people, less workers to fill some of these roles. That adoption of the technology, I think the younger guys are eager to do that, or the operators are eager to do that. Some of the old ones that are maybe, you know, still got a decade or so left, they might be a little more hesitant. They're afraid it may take their job. So it's really how we can convince, you know, these operators, these buildings, these clients, and show them that we're really just supplementing your team. We're trying to make your lives easier and make you guys run these buildings better. I think that's still the biggest gap that we see, at least on the implementing side and the client, the consulting side, to overcome right now, is just the outdated infrastructure that just needs an upgrade to begin with, or a new one that's so sloppy. And then, of course, the convincing, you know, the workforce that we're not replacing them.
Excellent. Thanks. Really covering some ground there. Thank you, Daniel. And actually, I've got just in case you're going to relax for a minute, I've got an audience question I can throw at you just very fast as well. We've talked about revenue and money, but I've got a question here. Daniel, can you give one example, please, of where FDD is saving you time with clients? One example of where it saves you time, please, Daniel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the past with the retro, again, you're going through just, 15-minute trend data, let's say raw CSV export files. It takes a ton of time to run that, crunch that, use it. With FDD, if I'm just putting it in through a software, I now have a targeted list of alerts or faults that I can quickly go through and get that into a client's hand, much more streamlined than in the past. So it is scalable as well because, again, we're looking at a ton of different sites that are getting the same kind of point nomenclature, right? So like the metadata is what we call it on the SIM side, but every supply fan speed that might be labeled 20 different ways across 20 different buildings is now a supply fan speed standardized. So I don't have to worry about what point am I even looking at and analyzing here manually. The software is kind of doing that for me. So that's kind of where we get that efficiency.
Excellent. Nice point. Dave, then, so I'm coming to you. You can't have any discussion these days, especially if it's tech orientated, without a little talk about AI. So we're just going to come to it at least briefly here. So Dave, AI continues to advance, obviously. So how's CIM leveraging it to enhance its FDD platform? Are there any upcoming AI-driven capabilities that you can see making a real difference to the things we're talking about in RCx and MBCx outcomes? AI, Dave, quick take on it.
Quick take. Look, we were embedded with it from the start. An expert system, the ability to, and I showed it with recreating the mind of a mechanical or electrical engineer to identify faults in data. So we're up to tens of thousands of individual algorithms that are able to do that, and that's continuously growing. I call it a digital sieve to kind of sieve through all the data and find that nugget of gold that you want, and that gets smarter and gets more granular daily. So that's the way we started. So we kind of like to say that we were AI before it became so frothy over the last couple of years. We also use it in tagging the actual data points and using LLMs to look at the names of the points and compare them with the points we have on our system. And that allows us to very, very quickly onboard a building. And when I say quickly, our record is 1.4 million square feet in a couple of hours to set up the technology, which is super quick. In the future, I believe there's an awful.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So it's in the future, I believe AI is like we're looking at it around video and sound fault detection, so that people can be in plant rooms and live stream videos back to us. Equally, the ability to actually talk to the platform, so you can have a non-technical person asking the peak platform, "Hey, look, what's the problems in the building today? On the 7 levels the lawyers are in, there's a problem in the boardroom. Would you like me to send another message to the contractor? Yes, go ahead." And having just that conversation analysis for it wouldn't pertain for like mechanical, electrical, or mechatronic engineers, but for it really works great with non-technical folks. So it's in every single case, it's working back from what is the problem. Like unless you're working back from an engineer's problem, then it's just technology for technology's sake. Which is
exactly. No, nice point. And Phil, I wonder if I could bring you in there just to give us your quick opinion on AI. Go on, give us shoot from the lip there a minute. What are your views on AI? Quickly, Phil.
Every prediction I've made has been wrong, so we'll start with that. But I would say that AI. Man, it's going to go and augment the engineering, augment the programming, augment the design. I don't see it getting anywhere close to auto-correcting, as one of the chat people asked. I think that it will continue to advise. I think that as we pour all the data, anonymized, of course, into large language models and other decision-making models, it will augment, but I do not see it replacing. I know that's kind of a non-answer, probably not sexy, but that's where I see us going.
Excellent. Now that's fair comment and a good assessment there. And so we're into the last few minutes here. I'm just going to throw out, I've got a couple of questions and then it will be final takeaways. So we're at that stage of things. So I think this might be more for David or Daniel. I've got a question. So what's the typical time to value or fault detection accuracy for new clients during deployment? So I don't know if you can see that
I'll take
question.
the time to value and the speed to value, and then maybe you can take it from there, Dan. But look, you have to, like, everybody with SaaS platforms is used to using Spotify and being able to listen to music in a new way very quickly. In buildings, it's all about doing that very, very quickly. So that's the speed to value is absolutely incredibly important.
Right, excellent. And Dan, equally fast reply if you can, if you want a little take on that, or also multi-site or multi-tenant environments.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be much quicker because we're targeted now. You know, your BAS, it provides an alarm, right? But it doesn't really tell you why you're getting that alarm. And I think that's the biggest jump here with the fault detection software. So, you know, maybe AI does the next thing, I don't know. But where we're at now is we have a targeted, we know exactly what's wrong and what's causing that alarm potentially at the BAS, or that may not be causing alarm, but causing energy use or waste or something else. So it's streamlining, you know, the value there instead. I'm not running up to a fan powered box where I have a hot call, not knowing what's causing it. I know it's an actuator on the heating valve, or it's a stuck damper, or the fan itself that's just blown up, whatever that may be. But I know what it is ahead of time. I'm not going there, making a trip, going back, picking up the parts. I'm already grabbing it and getting there in the field once and fixing that problem.
Excellent, thanks. Right, we are coming to the close now. So it's final takeaways, and these are going to be pithy and punchy. They're going to be snappy, aren't they, panel? So the question I'm asking each of you is, what's your just one key piece of advice for engineering firms looking to successfully implement embed FDD into their RCx and MBCx projects? So all we talked about today, boiling it down into one key piece of advice each. Dan, what's your one key piece of advice? What would you tell them?
Mine would be is using it as part of your process. You know, it's not going to just replace, you know, things you already do, or it's a supplement, right? So it's adopting it, using it with how it works for you. Like with our team, you know, FDD is one thing that we utilize to make ourselves better, and we've leaned into that. It's not like something you're just going to plug in off the shelf overnight and it's just going to run itself and work. You really need to have a plan and a process in place using it. So I think that would be the biggest thing to take away.
Excellent. Integrate and embed. So Phil, what's your one nugget, your key takeaway? If you remember nothing else, remember this one piece of advice.
For engineering firms, what you do is predictable. It's going to get replaced. That's my AI prediction. And you need to be tight with your customers. The ones that embed and get your customers dependent on you are going to be the ones who stay in business. And the ones who don't are going to be replaced by people who do.
Excellent. Strong. Throwing down the gauntlet there. And Dave, bringing it home. What's your one piece of advice, your big takeaway?
Phil took the words. This is coming to your clients anyway, right? Whether it's CIM or someone else, like the firms that are able to kind of jump on this and use it as a tool to build a better relationship with their clients are the ones that are going to hold on to those clients. And if not, like I see it, it's very difficult to get that level of a relationship if another firm already has it. People don't want to change. So it's a bit of a land grab, Jim, is my opinion.
Excellent, thanks. So those are strong notes to end on, and that's why this topic was so popular for us to talk about today. So there you go. We are bang on time. Some concluding thoughts from me very quickly. When it comes to low carbon technologies and energy efficiency, I would say our net zero agenda shifted obviously from a time of tell me to a world of show me. For buildings, we're going from promise to proof, and that means performance in use. It means measurement, monitoring, all the things we've been talking about, visibility, verification. So this ongoing operational success makes for these long-term partnerships that we want. And they're going to be ones where it's find it and fix it, or better still, predict it, prevent it, protect it. So my final comment is for real estate. This really is now the stress test for sustainability. This is what we're doing live in the real world. So in closing, big thank you to all our esteemed panelists for their insights, Phil Zito and Daniel Hosko, plus of course David Walsh and our hosts at CIM. To yourselves, our virtual audience out there. Bags of content in the chat and questions, and we'll get to some also after. Thank you very much for joining us at your desks and on your screens today. It's been a really engaging session. As mentioned, you'll all be sent the recording after this, so if there's anything you want to go back over, you want to look at those opening slides, you'll get it all on the email, and please don't forget to complete that little short post-event survey, always useful for us. So thanks for your time today. Look forward to seeing you at the next session in this webinar. Keep an eye on the CIM LinkedIn page and in your email inbox. That's it for today. I've been Jim McClelland, editor at SUSMeme. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks,
Jim. Thank you, folks. Bye-bye.